The year is 1964. Months after unveiling their new model at the Frankfurt International Motor Show, Porsche releases the 911 for sale to the public. And in the 60 years since then, the 911's design cues have remained remarkably consistent. The freestanding front fenders and flat hood design of a G-Series is also what you'll find on a 991. But perhaps most important to our story here is that unmistakable fastback flyline silhouette. If you ask me, it's that view from the side that is the most recognizable portion. So even when a 991 becomes the 2018 Pink Pig LM GTE contender, or a set of headlights and taillights from a 993 become a GT1, or for that matter, a little later on, if the headlights and taillights from a 996 made their way into becoming a GT1. Heck, even if in 1984 an example is built with lifted suspension, fitted with large off-road tires, and sent to Paris-Dakar to race, or those freestanding fenders are replaced in favor of a more flat nose appearance, no matter how radical the changes are for whatever the application, buried under there is that silhouette. Viewed from the side, that is a Porsche 911.
Okay, that's all great, but why am I, a predominantly cycling YouTuber, here?
Well, Porsche has an e-mountain bike, and the 911 has had a pretty big influence on its styling. And considering SpinDad is supposed to be a race car channel, but I keep making content about bikes, this seems fitting.
Friends! You'll have to excuse that overly dramatic intro, but it was so fun to make, I just kind of had to do it. This is the Porsche E-Bike Cross. It's one of two models that Porsche has put out for e-bike selections. The Cross is more the mountain bike version, so naturally it's more the one that I gravitated towards. And Porsche of Halifax was nice enough to invite me to come look at it and take it out to try it. But, as with any good review, we actually have to go over what this thing actually is. So, the frame is a Porsche unique design, and it's built in collaboration with Rottweild. The idea behind the frame design and its shape is to mimic the roofline of a 911. And thankfully, I'm at Porsche of Halifax, so there's 911s here for us to make that comparison. Not to mention this Cross and that 911 kind of have the same colors. It's 100 millimeters of rear travel using a Fox Float DPS, and the fork is a Fox 34 mountain bike specific 120 millimeters travel. It's boost spacing as you would expect, and because this is an e-bike, it's using the Shimano EP8 mid-drive, which as I read from the specs on the ground here has 85 Newton meters of torque, and this model is paired up with a 504 watt-hour battery. And they say here the expected range for this setup is 100 kilometers on eco mode, 75 on trail mode, and 50 kilometers on boost. That is absurd range. I'm very much looking forward to testing that. Shimano XT 12-speed drivetrain, XT e-bike crank, Magura brakes. We've got 4 piston in the front, 2 in the rear, and some super burly rotors. Crank Brothers Enduro wheels, Crank Brothers dropper, 150 mils of drop. Looks like a 50 or a 45 millimeter long stem, 780 wide millimeter burrs, ergon saddle, ergon grips. I guess that kind of covers everything. I'm gonna take this and test all that.
So I think this comes as no surprise, pretty obvious. If I'm gonna have access to an e-mountain bike, I'm gonna bring it here. Pedal access only, Wentworth Mountain Bike Bike Park. Okay, first climb done. For reference, typically a first climb here, depending on which bike I'll be on, will be anywhere from, realistically, 17 minutes, sometimes to like half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes if I'm really trying to conserve energy. This thing on eco and trail mode, kind of mixed, 11 minutes. I'm gonna do Hakuna, the flow trail here at Wentworth, because it's nice and long, and it'll give this thing a chance to let the Maguras finally marry to the rotors, because right now, this is a brand new bike, and the brakes, like, they don't work. That's just the way brand new bikes are. At the bottom of this, they'll be biting exactly the way they need to. Okay, so 3 laps of Hakuna. 1 to bed the pads to the rotor, working good. 2nd, to enjoy it with the brakes broken in. 3rd, to get all those shots. It all looks like 1 run to you, but it has been 1 hour. Normally something like this takes me forever. And on the flow trail, the 67-degree head tube angle, definitely not too steep, but you can kind of ride any bike on there and have a good time. So I guess that just means, let's go ride other trails. So I spent the last hour or so just hot lapping all the trails on this side of the mountain. And I've done that for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to just see what it was like physically to just keep doing laps for an hour or so, just on an e-bike. 2, I wanted to see what the battery capacity was like. I did lose a light of battery, so I'm down to 3 now. That's pretty good. I think I'm at 23 kilometers so far. 3, I wanted to see what it would be like on all the different trails that there are on this side of the mountain. What number am I on? Anyway, the most important thing is, when am I gonna get the opportunity to get 5 runs in here in 1 hour? Typically I only get 5 total for the entire time that I'm here, which is usually like 4 hours. This is a big deal. Okay, this being a pedal access only bike park, this being an e-mountain bike, I think it's only natural we discuss the climbing capabilities. And to fully discuss the climb and the Porsche E-Bike Cross characteristics during the climb, we need a short and sweet lesson on the differences between the 2 different power delivery sensors. The sensor used in the EP8 motor spec'd on the Porsche E-Bike Cross is a torque sensor. That means as you push on the pedals, the harder you push, the harder the motor works with you. If you don't put a lot of effort in, the motor doesn't put a lot of effort in. There's every e-bike that I have ever used which uses a cadence sensor. With a cadence sensor, when the bike feels any movement of the crank, it delivers the full power of the mode that you've selected. So if you're on Power 5, say that's a 500 watt motor, it immediately starts giving you 500 watts right away. I had kind of heard about torque sensors, but I didn't really understand why you would want that until I got to like switchbacks like this. So I was honestly a little bit worried because my expectation from all of my previous experience was as I get to turns like this and I'm pressing on the pedals, it might just want to shoot me wide, even though like, but that is literally not the case at all. It just does what you do. So even pedaling like this, it doesn't take off. A little more power.
It just does what you do. Completely predictable, so much better than I was expecting. I know for any like really seasoned e-bike reviewer, or if you already have experience riding torque sensor motors, you already know all this, but I didn't. It felt important to put in here. Otherwise, yeah, it's a friggin' motor pushing you up a hill. Obviously, that's sick.
So considering the geometry, considering the travel of this thing, the 120 millimeters in the front, the 100 in the rear, and the size of the fork, the 34 millimeter stanchions, this obviously lands directly in the cross-country category for an e-bike. And as such, that's the kind of trails that it's kind of happiest to be on. But it's not that it can't do more. I'm just a little bit held back by the fact that this thing has tubes in it right now. I'm running like pretty high pressure, and it sort of takes away from how good the suspension is working. But if this was my bike that I didn't have to give back, that had my wheels and a tubeless setup on it, there's no reason this couldn't smash through all of the really like techie, rocky, rooty trails that are in here. I'm a little timid to push the bike that hard, but I know it can do it. So it's conflicting, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution, just to be like a decent human being, I think. But what I am really loving is the fact that the suspension works as good as it does. I sort of thought the 34 might be a little undergunned for this entire bike, but all the carbon here, like this giant head tube mixed with a 34, that combined creates a stiff enough chassis that you don't feel any annoying like wailing like I've complained about with smaller forks in the past. I guess I just thought maybe the 34 would be too small for how much bike is here. Doesn't seem to be the case. If I owned this, I would probably try and get a hold of something bigger, like a 38, and lower it to try and like make it match the giant head tube a little bit better. Now this has been my favorite part. The shock is very supple, it's tuned well, the rebound is not too fast, so it doesn't buck me as I hit these jumps. I thought the first time down, there might be a moment of like, okay, gotta get used to this. It's kind of better than most of the bikes I own. There's no way that that second last bar has much life left, but like I'm done. My plan was to like kill the battery completely to find out how many kilometers it'll do. I just like don't want to. My arms, my legs, I would not have thought the battery would outlast me.
So, Strava tells me that I got 39 kilometers out of this battery for this video. There was 2 bars of battery life left. I don't know how much was left in that second one, but the entire time I was riding, I was basically switching between eco, trail, a little bit of boost just to see what it was like, but mostly eco and trail. And usually on a downhill, I would sort of turn it off and then I left it on a couple times. It was not a consistent like power level at all times. I was riding different. I wanted to experience it. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the amount of range. Obviously, I'm new to it, so it's like novel. Of course, I want to like see what it's like at full power. I'm kind of using it in an inefficient manner. I could see as I settled into a rhythm, maybe didn't play with it so much, getting even more range, being even better with the battery. So maybe the ranges aren't as far-fetched as maybe I sort of expected. They're probably still optimistic, but you're getting a lot of riding in for the amount of battery you get. Thank you to Porsche of Halifax for trusting me with this thing and giving me free reign to the dealership to shoot video in. If you're interested in knowing more or want to see the Cross in person for yourself, go see the crew at Porsche of Halifax and let them know I sent you. Why not? Why not?